What up, Facebook? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Happy middle of the week. Hope everybody's hanging in there, making it through okay. Wait a few moments for some people to join in. All right. Hi, Lex. Glad you're here. So just to give a quick thank you to people so yesterday was our Giving Tuesday. So that's normally a date that they do in December. And they were able to do it yesterday as well too. So Recovery Fitness did post about that on our page. Basically, it was just a global day of giving and unity. It's as kind of an emergency response to the unprecedented needs caused by COVID. And it was an opportunity for people around the world to stand together and, just give their individual power of generosity. And that could have happened in any number of ways, whether it was helping a neighbor or advocating for an issue, sharing a skill, or donating and giving to causes. So if you participated that in any way yesterday, we just want to thank you for your generosity and your kindness. And, also to be able to continue that generosity and kindness every day, right? We always want to kind of carry that going forward and helping other people out and showing up for other people and just being there. So thank you to all who participated in Giving Tuesday yesterday. Thank you so very much for that. Much appreciated. All right, got quite a few people on here already. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you? Sarah. Hello. Julie Smith. Hi from North Dakota. That is awesome. So cool. Very, very, very glad to have you here. I'm curious, Julie Smith, how did you hear about Recovery? You're joining all the way from North Dakota, so how were you introduced to Recovery? Feel free to post that in the comments too. Hi, Holly. Glad to see you. So I'd love to hear some brief check-ins with you all, just kind of how your day has been going so far, how your week has been going. We're kind of halfway through. Um, so please feel free to comment. Love hearing from you guys always. Um, So, kind of getting into our reading today, for those of you who have not been joining and are new, I've been reading to you out of the book called Hopeful Healing by Mackenzie Phillips. And just to give you a little background on her, so Mackenzie Phillips is an actress. She was on a few soap operas back in the day. She's also the author of her New York Times bestselling memoir that's called High on Arrival, which is really more about her story and growing up. You may also know her as the daughter of the founder of the 1960s band, the Mamas and the Papas. Mackenzie grew up in a dysfunctional environment and subsequently battled a near fatal drug addiction. She is now a drug and alcohol counselor and outspoken advocate for addiction awareness and education. And she gets real about the hard times of recovery, how to get through them, and the joy of experiencing life clean and sober. And kind of reading a little bit into the preface. So each one of these chapters in here is not necessarily about her story. She does tie in bits and pieces of her story, but they're more little essays on different pieces and different aspects of recovery and addiction. Mackenzie says, in these essays, I've concentrated on the concepts and feelings that surround the recovery process rather than on the linear story of my life in recovery. I wanted to preserve the conversational foundation of these essays so that they would provide a genuine experience, and hopefully the person reading them would find a friend and some words that are helpful along their own journey. This is a wisdom-based book, not a clinical book. This is also a conversational book. While I do include some basic facts about substance use disorders, I make no claim to being an expert on all things addiction and recovery. I am, however, an expert in my own experiences of those two things. And it is in this that I have found the strongest connection with my clients and the recovery center where I work. So that's just to give you all a little background on here. Julie Smith, I'm moving to New York. I visited last year. Awesome. Very glad to hear that. And happy to have you on here again. Checking in with Lex, having a rough day. Weather is getting to me and feeling like I have to force myself to be productive. No energy and struggling a bit, but I haven't wanted to use and I'm staying grateful. It's good. I'm glad to hear that. And you're right. This is hard, right? I don't want to get into it too much because it's constantly a topic of conversation and there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like, I've been stuck on these conversations with people a lot, like it's hard to be productive, right? And I feel you. I'm right there with you. I'm feeling that some days. I'm having to force myself to be productive, having to force myself to get up and do the things, to go work out, to work, to make the phone calls, to connect with people, to go to meetings, all the things that I normally very easily do in my regular life. I'm finding that, however many weeks and days we are into this thing right now, I'm finding myself that I'm having to force myself to do those things. And that's hard, right? I get that. I totally relate to that. But like you said, you haven't wanted to use and you're staying grateful. And sometimes at the end of the day, like that's all we can do right now, right? Like kind of have acceptance that, there are days where I am going to need to force myself to get up and do the things, and the days that I don't feel like it, that's okay. But for me, I don't want to stay there for days on end. There are times where I let myself stay in bed some days and, I'll do that for a couple hours and just kind of take that self-care. And that's okay, recognizing that I need that. But for me, when it starts becoming an all day thing and then a 2 day in a row thing and a 3 day in a row thing, then I know something's really going on. And I can't function that way. And that's not everybody's experience. That's okay. I'm also somebody who's up here not, pretending to be an expert in all things recovery. I'm only an expert in my own story and my own experiences, and that I can share with you. And I can just say, to those of you that are going through that right now, I feel you, and I'm sorry, and it sucks, and I get it. But we just got to keep trudging. That's it. And Lex, I love what you said. We got to stay grateful. That's it. So if the most that I do in one day for myself is stay sober and grateful for it at the end of the day, like if I'm able to still write my gratitude list at the end of every night before I go to bed, which is just something I do, then I consider that a win for the day. If I can't get up and save the world every single day, it's just not possible and it's not sustainable. So really just trying to remember that self-kindness and that it's okay. We're going to have days like that. We're going to have days where we feel like we're forcing it, we're not feeling it, and that's okay. Look at the circumstances we're in. This isn't normal life, so just kind of giving yourself that grace and that forgiveness that it's okay. I get it. So today's reading, oddly enough, not oddly enough, but ironically enough, is on forgiveness and esteem. Chapter 9 is called Do Better on Forgiveness and Esteem. And she always has a quote at the beginning. This is from T.S. Eliot. The quote today is, "And to make an end is to make." So what I've been doing with you all is just kind of jumping around in bits and pieces of these chapters. I'm not really reading them consecutively. They are longer chapters, and I only have so much time. I want to make sure I get to the comments as well. So as always, I continue to encourage you guys to be open, to be vulnerable, to be honest, to please comment while I'm reading. We can have discussion on here. I love checking in with your comments at the end. And to always be respectful of each other too, of course. But yeah, we'll kind of jump right into it. Again, I'm kind of jumping around, so if something doesn't make sense or you feel like you missed something, you probably didn't. I'm just jumping around and trying to pull the meat out of today's reading. So yes, focusing on forgiveness and esteem. And also just I've kind of been letting people know, like, I'm reading things exactly pretty much as, with the with the filtering of a couple swear words on here. I'm trying to be censored on Facebook Live here. But other than that, I am reading it the way Mackenzie wrote it. And, there is some language she uses in there, often still referring to, herself as an addict or, some of those terms that we use. And I don't want to get into that whole topic, but I've been encouraging people to really just pay attention to the language you use when you're out there in the world telling your story. As people in recovery, there is a lot of stigma around, addiction and alcoholism and drug use and, all of that. And I'm sure we've all been exposed to that at some point or another. So, really just focusing on how it is we want to be portrayed to the rest of the community. So how do you tell your story? How do you view yourself? Are you slapping on those negative labels that have such a really harsh connotation to them? Or are you, telling your story in a more person-centered, positive way? So just being mindful of that too. But again, I'm just reading it as she has written. So I'm kind of gonna jumping in here. So Mackenzie says, we live on two opposite ends of a spectrum. Usually, when we're having our piece of crap moments, we feel like we should be asking for forgiveness for somebody for the crap we've put people in our lives through. We often forget that sometimes the person we need to forgive the most is ourselves. It's tricky, this forgiveness thing. When we talk about forgiveness, we're usually talking about it in one of three ways. Please forgive me. I forgive you. I forgive myself. All three are tied up in some way, shape, or form with self-esteem and esteem in general. For an addict, the dialogue of forgiveness, both the external and the internal, plays a large role in reestablishing that esteem. It's a lifelong process, finding this place inside yourself that is more reality-based. A place from which you can say, yeah, that happened, I did that, but I would never do it now. Self-forgiveness can be tricky. What do you forgive yourself for? For the harm you've done to yourself seems the obvious answer. But to what level do we go? I had to forgive myself for using while pregnant and for using again after 10 years of being clean. I betrayed some of my core beliefs and pretty much ravaged my self-trust. Forgiving myself took some doing. But at a certain point, I realized I had been forgiving myself for stuff that wasn't mine. One time I was in my car listening to the oldies station when a song from the Mamas and the Papas came on. I said, "Hi, Dad," out loud. I immediately cringed and started to analyze the moment. What does this mean? Is this bad? Does my acknowledging him mean I've betrayed my truth that he hurt me? It wasn't until later, when I had a little more wisdom on board, that I could see it in a different way and find my forgiveness in this context. First, not everything has to have a deeper meaning and connection. Second, he was my dad and I loved him, so of course I'd say hi. That was all I needed to carry away from that moment. And so some of that, much more of her story is in her memoir, High on Arrival, talking about all the childhood trauma that she went through with, abuse and addiction and molestation when she was a child. So that's what she was referring to, some of the struggles that she's had with her dad. She shares quite a bit of that in this book about, having to forgive him for all this, the crazy stuff that she went through as a kid. Mackenzie says, in a way, forgiveness can become a lifestyle, or maybe an everyday philosophy. It's moving through life understanding that a person's going to make mistakes, that you're going to make mistakes. For the most part, no one goes into life with the intention to cause damage. The damage is usually inadvertent and unforeseen, not intentional at all. Think about how often people are surprised when you tell them that they've hurt your feelings. They have no idea. So a philosophy of forgiveness might include a general blanket of forgiveness for the little crappity crap, for the stuff that's not aimed at anyone, for the crap that's just there. Do I think that my father held me in his arms when I was a baby and thought, I'm going to abuse my daughter someday? No. I think that a toxic combination of chance and circumstance and drugs and alcohol morphed into something dark and ugly. I don't think that what he did was his intention. I don't think that he planned to do what he did. And I think that I can see him as a deeply flawed human being in light of all this. I can forgive that flaw. It doesn't mean that I accept the act or that I should, but that I can see it for what it wasn't as well as for what it was. Forgiveness is complex. And I want to pause right there for a second. I was in a meeting the other day where our whole topic was about forgiveness, actually. So this is really just kind of, being right along those lines. And it is complex, right? For so many of us, forgiveness it's not necessarily this easy black and white thing. You know what I mean? There's not this specific rule written that there's one way to do it. And it's, because all of our situations are just so different. And it can be really challenging sometimes. And I was kind of sharing the other day, like, I think sometimes we get in that mindset of, okay, well, I can forgive, it looks like a list, right? So I can forgive this, this, and this, and this, and this. But this act, oh my gosh, I could never forgive that. That's horrible. We're talking about murder. We're talking about abuse. We're talking about crimes committed. We're talking about this. We're talking about that. You know what I mean? And so once we start getting into this dangerous mindset of drawing that line in the sand of saying, I'll forgive everything up until this point, but after that point, I could never forgive that. That's dangerous territory, right? And it is, while it is hard to forgive those really horrible, heavy things that happen in life, because they do happen. And sometimes we look at those situations and, we're like, how I could never forgive this. What a horrible thing that happened, right? But when we're doing that, and again, this is just my experience, but when we're doing that, we're still harboring that hate and that resentment and those negative feelings in our hearts, right? We're still hanging on to those things. And I've often found that when I'm resentful or angry at somebody for doing something to me, oftentimes at the end of the day, like it's still hurting me. It's bothering me on the inside. You know what I mean? Like it's hardening my heart. It's affecting me. And eventually that starts affecting my recovery and my daily life, my thinking, my peace, my serenity, you know? So I've realized that I cannot draw this line in the sand. I cannot sit here and say, I will forgive all of these things, but if you do that, I can't forgive you. I can't do that. I've learned that I have to have forgiveness in my heart. And again, that's a really hard thing to do. And some people are like, well, how do you do that? How do you begin to forgive people that have done unforgivable things to you? Or even begin to forgive ourselves, right? We're all human. We've all done those unforgivable things. They look a little different, and sometimes we don't talk about them. Sometimes we think we're going to take those things to our grave. So some people ask, well, how do you begin to forgive that? And for me, it comes down to, I often talk about doing the things that have been suggested to me, and one of those things has been pray. And I don't want to get too far into that topic, but I encourage you all to be open minded. And if praying is something you believe in, it doesn't matter what it's to. And we don't need to get into the topic of trying to define that, your higher power, right? It can be anything. It can be light, love, energy, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. So please take that in whatever way it means to you. But for me, I had to pray. I had to keep that connection to my higher power open, and I had to keep praying for forgiveness for a person in my life. You know, I was asking for that forgiveness. Please help me forgive this person. And I had to do it even when I didn't want to, even when it made me cringe, right? But it was the act and the practice of just doing it over and over and over again, anyways. And eventually, I don't know, I can't explain it, but my heart started to soften. And I wasn't hanging on to as many of those hurt feelings anymore for this person. And today, I do have forgiveness for that person in my life. And I do have forgiveness for myself for the things that I've done. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. We all hurt people. That's part of life. We're kind of wired that way, you know. But, I just don't have that hate in my heart today. And I'm so grateful for that. But think about some of those, grudges or maybe resentments. Maybe you have somebody in your life that you're frustrated with. Like maybe they've done you wrong. No matter the level of severity of whatever it was, maybe they've done you wrong. And you're thinking right now, yeah, but I could never forgive that person. This thing they did was so awful. It caused this damage, you know what I mean? It had a ripple effect of damage to not only myself, but other people. And maybe you're thinking right now, like, there's no way I could ever forgive that. But I encourage you to just really think about that. Think more so about what it's going to do if you don't learn that forgiveness in your life. Think about what that's going to do to you, not so much the other person, but think about what that's going to do to you. Think about what it's doing to you to carry all of that hate and anger and hurt and, all those negative emotions. Think about what carrying that on your heart every single day is doing to you. What is that doing to you over time? I really encourage you to look deep into that. But like Mackenzie says, forgiveness is complex. And I love that she says this. This is important. It doesn't mean that I can accept the act or that I should, but that I can see it for what it wasn't as well as for what it was, right? So if you're thinking right now, well, this horrible person did this thing to me, and if I forgive them, that means I'm forgiving, all the crap they put me through. No, that's not what that means. It doesn't mean that you're excusing the behavior and saying that the behavior that they did was okay, but what it means is that you're letting go of that anger in your heart towards them, and that you're forgiving them, and you're having an understanding that, and again, this is not to make excuses, but you're having an understanding that they are also human with who also makes mistakes, right? We all have those little things that we struggle with. We all make mistakes. We all hurt people. So by forgiving, we're kind of getting a dose of that humility and, really just able to look at somebody with compassion instead of hate and anger. Because ask yourselves, like, what is hanging on to that hate do? What good does that do for you? I don't care how mad you are at that person. What tell me right now what good that does for you, you know? So really thinking about that moving forward. Um when let's see. Mackenzie says, when we are talking about forgiveness and self-forgiveness, what we're really talking about is making a small decision to do better. We're saying, I'm going to try to be conscious of this. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm making a promise. When someone accepts an apology, they're accepting that promise and they are saying that they have empathy about the behavior. This is especially important for recovery because our addict's monkey mind is so adept at shoving us into the spiral of regret and guilt and shame over and over again if we're not careful. Mackenzie says, with my dad, because I have forgiven him, I accept the past for what it is. And to me, that acceptance and that forgiveness don't mean that what he did was okay. It means that I can be okay. So again, really thinking about that. We're not necessarily excusing the behavior that someone else has done to us or that we've done, right? You know, we can take ownership in the ways that we've hurt people, in the ways that we've caused damage, right? So we're not excusing what they did, but it means that I can be okay. I am able to talk about my past, and doing so, remember some of the hilarious stuff we used to do, and acknowledge that he was funny and even kind, the good memories. He also abused me, and there's no changing that. That is what happened. Full stop. Even so, these two realities can coexist through forgiveness. Asking for or giving forgiveness is often linked with making up for the mistake or the damage that was done. In other words, making amends. Clean up your side of the street as best as you can. Clean up the things that fall to you to clean. And then live a life that shows you've learned from your choices and that you will do your best to not cause harm again. When you've actually forgiven yourself, there's a physical feeling, an almost spiritual weightlessness that makes you feel a sense of lightness of being. But self-forgiveness takes a while to get to, and until you do, you just have to bear the weight, even when it feels unbearable sometimes. Grace can help you do that if you let it. And I love that too, you know, kind of owning up. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, so I don't want to go too far into it, but, you know, owning up the damage that we've done too. Because like I said, you know, we are all human and we've all made mistakes. We've all hurt people. We've all done things we're not proud of. You know, I believe as humans we are wired that way. You know, it's intended that we do that so that we can grow through the uncomfortableness of making it right. You know, I can clean up my side of the street as best as I can, and then I'm leaving the rest up to, you know, I can't make that other person forgive me. You know, sometimes people don't want to forgive us. But what I can do is try anyways. You know, I can offer out, you know, own up my stuff, and I can apologize, and I can, you know, really make it an effort in my daily life to not act that way again. How that other person responds is entirely up to them, and I need to just let it go after that, right? But it's important, you know. But actually forgiving myself too. There's a process of that. The thing with addiction is that when the substance use disorder is active, we do a lot of things that cause others and ourselves pain. More often than not, our own emotional or physical pain is the driving force behind using a substance to dull or cover personal hurt. And then the psychological part of the addiction kicks in and we can't stop. We tell ourselves that we are weak or that we deserve whatever we get or a myriad of other horrible things as we pursue our addiction. Remember regret, guilt, and shame? Those are some of the topics we covered yesterday. We talk ourselves so far into the ground that it seems true that we're a piece of crap. We do things that underscore that we're crappy, and of course, we do more crappy things to make sure we score, all of which will need to be forgiven by ourselves or others. And that's scary. It's not an all-at-once proposition. It's a process that you break down into small pieces. One of the biggest things we have to look at when we look at forgiveness is the tangible outcome. You can't just think it. You have to act. This is deeply connected to our self-esteem and our esteem towards others. When we live a lifestyle of doing better, we do so by doing esteemable acts. Esteemable acts are those in which you, in small or large ways, show your respect for and recognize the human dignity in others. Living a changed life starts with your inner dialogue. Begin listening to how you're talking to yourself and how you're talking about the world around you. What are your 5 most repetitive, cycling negative thoughts throughout your day? Write them down and bring them to your sponsor or counselor to discuss. Find out if they're true. Find out what you can do to shift them a little bit. How are you talking to other people? How is your behavior? Are you reacting or are you responding? Is it the same behavior minus your drug of choice? Are you beginning to change? If you have trouble changing by thinking about it first, then reverse the process. Start acting like the changed person you want to be, even if you're not feeling it. You know the old adage, fake it till you make it? Try it out. Start doing things that make you proud. It can be as simple as giving someone a mindful smile or a sincere acknowledgement, or it can be more complex, like regularly and consistently volunteering someplace where you can make a meaningful impact on someone's life. Esteemable acts create self-esteem and help you understand what it means to do better. Forgiveness and having a life with the motto of do better is not a been there, done that, got the t-shirt kind of thing. It's a whole life thing. Forgiveness, both asking for it and giving it, is a priceless gift. It frees us from the past and helps us create a healthy future. It's a commitment to yourself, a promise you make. It is something you choose every day, and it is something that will make every day worthwhile. And really just kind of, hanging on to that too. She brings this up, I read this like a week or so ago in one of her other chapters, but she said living the life that's filled with change starts with that inner dialogue. So, I'm always encouraging you guys to pay attention to yourself, the dialogue you tell yourself, the way you share your story out loud, but also what's happening in here. How do you talk to yourselves throughout the day? Do you make a mistake and curse yourself out? Are you hard on yourself, or are you gentle? Do you give yourself grace and forgiveness? So paying attention to that, paying attention to the 5 most repetitive cycling negative thoughts throughout your day. For me, one of those thoughts is I'm not enough, or I didn't do enough. I didn't put in enough effort. I didn't do enough work today. I didn't work out long enough, or I haven't helped enough people yet. You know what I mean? Like that's my own ego, really, kind of that, for me, that self-seeking behavior, like always needing to feel like I'm enough, But if I'm being honest and looking at that, that's one of the things I struggle with. That's one of those repetitive cycling thoughts that happens in my mind constantly. And she said, finding out if they're true. And I'm not going to counsel myself of finding out if they're true because, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I can't have that dialogue with myself. I need to have it with other people that I can trust, who are going to give it to me real, and be able to ask me if those things are true. Those negative cycling thoughts we have in our minds, are those even true? And if you don't trust answering that with yourself, do you have people in your life that you trust? Do you have that support network that you can go to? But it really starts with looking within yourself. And I said this yesterday, the more we're able to look within ourselves, the more that self-awareness just is able to grow, right? So at the end of each one of her chapters, she's always got a little section, kind of the take home, which becomes my take home for you all. So the first one is called Keep Your Promise. Figure out your esteemable acts strategy. Start simple with something meaningful to you. Slowly grow your list of esteemable acts until they fully reflect how you want to do better in your life. Each time you act, think of it as a renewal of your commitment to change and to act with intention. This is an investment in your future. In simple terms, you have tremendous inherent value. Every time you act, you're buying stock in yourself. I love that. So really paying attention to those esteemable acts. And again, it can be something simple. It can be something, giving a mindful smile to people out in public. It's a weird time right now. So the few times that we are going out in public, I'm noticing is people are afraid to even look at each other. It's so bizarre with, the whole pandemic and everything. It's like people can't even acknowledge each other anymore. It's bizarre, or the homeless person on the street that we all pass. And, how many times are you in your car? You're like, oh, don't look my way, don't look my way, don't look my way. Don't make eye contact. How many times do you do that? Can you change that attitude and that simple little behavior? Not necessarily like I'm not here to give you money, but I'm going to smile and wave at you and acknowledge you as a human, someone who's struggling. And maybe that person just needs to smile that day. Thinking about it in that perspective, shifting that, right? There's nothing to hide from. There's nothing to, don't make eye contact. You know what I mean? Like, can you start with those simple acts by just being kind to others when you're out in public? Can you let someone go in front of you in traffic instead of cutting someone else off? Start with those small acts and let those build. The last piece I'll leave you with is it works if you work it. So she wants you to write a list of things for which you'd like forgiveness from yourself. After you are done, go down that list and for each item say out loud, I forgive myself for blank. Now write about how it felt to extend forgiveness to yourself. And I guarantee that that's probably, I'm going to take a educated guess that that's probably pretty hard for some of you. And some of you are probably like, no way, I am not doing that because that's uncomfortable, right? It's the hardest to forgive ourselves sometimes, I think. We talked yesterday about shame and guilt, and oftentimes shame is one of the worst ones because we're carrying around this idea that I am bad, I am this, I am that. And it's oftentimes negative, so I challenge you to really look at yourselves. And like she says, write down a list of things you would like forgiveness for yourself. And then give yourself that forgiveness. Go down that list. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle with yourself. I forgive myself for this. I forgive myself for that. I forgive myself for that. Do it. Take the action, the more we do these little exercises and these little changes in our day-to-day lives, the more we start to change and grow. And again, even if you're faking it till you make it, just do it anyways. Just start acting yourself into the behavior, right? I can't do it by overthinking about it beforehand, like, oh, maybe I'll do this next week or maybe I'll do this next month. No, just start now in acting ourselves into the right living, into the right behavior. Just start doing it. Fake it till you make it. It's one of those annoying statements, but like it's one that I hang on to. I love that. So that's kind of what I got for you all today. Lex says, we hurt ourselves when we refuse to give. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. We hurt ourselves when we refuse to forgive or even try to forgive. Yeah, absolutely. Anger is far worse for you than forgiving something that hurt you. It will just continue to hurt you. Absolutely, yeah, right? Because that's what we're talking about. We harbor those angry, those really negative feelings within inside of ourselves, and all that is doing, at the end of the day, if I'm pissed at somebody because they hurt me, oftentimes my hanging on to that grudge and that anger and that resentment, maybe it's hurting them a little bit, but it's causing way more damage to me. It's keeping me up at night. It's making me feel irritable and grouchy and snappy towards other people in my life because I'm hanging on to these negative feelings, right? So that's a really good point, Lex. Yeah, anger is absolutely far worse. Holly says, 100% relatable today. Thank you. You helped me today. I'm so glad to hear that. And again, this is me just sharing somebody else's story again. This is this is the book if you're interested in it. I have read through it before. It's a wonderful book. I love these little essays she has on different things in recovery. So check that out if you're looking for some new things to read. And again, also sharing, my own experience. I'm not up here as an expert, but just somebody who is here just connecting with you all today. So I'm just so glad that all of you were able to join me. Thank you so much. If you missed any of these videos or if you came in late, that's okay. All of these videos do save. You can find them on our Recovery Fitness Facebook page under all the videos. You can also go to our awesome new Recovery Fitness YouTube channel. I did post a link in the above description, so please feel free to check that out. Share it with your friends, share it with your family. And I also encourage you to check out our wonderful other Facebook Live videos by some of our other recovery crew. They're putting out some really good content for you all at home to stay connected, to keep you active, to keep you thoughtful, mindful, and positive, and spreading hope. So that is what we are here to do. I'm so glad that you all were able to join me today and allow me to spread a little bit of hope. For somebody who's really struggling right now, please do not hesitate to reach out. I've posted our Peer Services hotline number in the description above. It's 585-622-4975. You can also Facebook message us or email us to get connected with Peer Services, or if you're really just struggling right now, please reach out. We are here. This is a really difficult time, and we can't do this alone. We need other people. And I need you guys just as much as, maybe some of you need us. So please continue to reach out, and I will check in with you all tomorrow. You guys are great. You had some really good comments. I love it. Thank you so much. All right, I will check in with you all tomorrow. Bye.